For Dan Weber, I'm Johnie Freatman, bringing you instant analysis here from the tunnel of the Coliseum. And Dan, first thought about tonight's game for me is the poor defensive job USC did. What are your thoughts on what went wrong?
Well, it's interesting. We were just talking about in the post-game press conference, it was all offense talk. That Lane brought 3 offensive players and said basically the game was lost on 3 offensive possessions where they got a field goal and turned the ball over twice, and he thought that was the game. So he's analyzing it from the offensive point of view. My guess would be you've given up 728 yards, the most in history of the school, a record that hasn't been broken since 1946 Notre Dame team, which I like to remind people, Bino Cook always talked about that 1946 Notre Dame team because that was the team that put, I think the number is 43 players into the NFL. They had the previous record against USC, 619. These guys obliterated that record. So my thinking would be Dion Bailey had more of the answer, which was we just didn't tackle. We just didn't do our assignments. We didn't tackle, and that to me is much more the game. You score 51 points. He probably scored. It'd be nice to have those 51 last week in Arizona, wouldn't it?
Given Lane's comments in the post-game news conference about the offense, what does that tell you about the emphasis he placed on the defense and perhaps a lack of proper preparation for facing this team?
Well, he pretty much admitted it. He said he was asked point blank. That's 2 straight weeks against spread offenses you've given, and he said, yeah, we've given up well over 600 yards both weeks. So obviously we're not doing what's the right thing. He said, I wish I could tell you what the right thing to do is. If I did have an idea, I would have probably tried to change it in the game. He said, I don't have an answer for you right now. He did admit what they're doing right now. I mean, let's face it, this was a USC team. They spent 3 years building the defense in order to stop Oregon. Year 3, Oregon, 728 yards. I'm not thinking, I mean, they played them well last year. This year they couldn't run with them at all, couldn't tackle them. Last year they ran with them and they tackled them. This year, I mean, how many times did the first guy make the tackle? A couple of times the whole game?
On the offensive side of the ball, Nelson Aguilar was a real bright spot. What did you think about the way he performed and just how good he can be in the future?
Well, and then his attitude. We were just talking to him, and he's kind of beating himself up on that first catch where he said, you know, I've got to make that play. 100 times out of 100, I should make that play. I said, man, that was a hard play. Said the rule's different in the end zone. You've got to come up with the ball after the catch. You got to hit the ground, boom, you got to be back up, and you still have to have possession. It's not like on the field of play. He said, I should make that play. That's on me. He's an amazing kid. I don't know where he's been, but he's a pretty good player.
Matt Barkley put up some very impressive numbers tonight, especially yardage-wise. At the same time, he missed on a number of throws. How would you assess his overall performance?
You know, he didn't look like he was moving very well. He's got some great receivers. I mean, somebody asked Chip Kelly in the Oregon press conference, said, are you really disappointed your team gave up 51 points? And he looked at the guy and said, what? And he said, they're pretty good. He said, did you see Marcus Lee last week? He caught 16 passes for 345 yards, and the only thing that stopped him is he got tired. He said, come on. And the guy said again, and he said, no, I'm not disappointed. They're really good. And so, yeah, USC's pretty good. They fought hard. I thought they played really hard. Matt would like to have some of those balls back, and I don't know that we've got an explanation as to a couple of the flips, a couple of balls that are thrown behind guys where they could get a first down if it's in the right place. They got to reach back. They don't get the first down. They get the drive stop. I don't know. I mean, Marquise talked about the interception in the end zone. He started off first. He said, great defense. The guy was holding me, and Lane said, stop with just great defense. And then the questioner said, he mugged you, didn't he? He said, well, yeah, he did mug me. He said, but they didn't see it. They didn't call it, you know, so what are you going to do? But there's a play where he ends up, sure, he got pushed and held, but he's wide open 3 feet in front of the defender. And the inability to maybe make that instantaneous, you know, read that he's not going to be where you think he's going to be, but he's wide open. And you end up still throwing it to the defender. Those really hurt. I mean, you don't ever get those back.